and one of the water cannons has been stuck as it tried to navigate the traffic snarl-up, to spray the NASA supporters and, repulse them away. And so what essentially is happening now is its sister cannon is coming, to unstuck it from the mud. But that is just some of the action happening here. But we have had some casualties, Fred. One police officer has been hit by a stone by NASA supporters during that engagement, and he has since been, driven off for some medication. But that is not enough, Fred. The saddest bit is as the police tried, to engage the NASA supporters, essentially they started hurling stones at the police officers, and the outcome of it, Fred, is several vehicles that are plying this road have been, smashed and destroyed, with even some of the passengers and some of the drivers getting themselves in the catch-22 situation, and they have fallen victim. Already, as you can see from that point, those are just victims of the police engagements with the NASA supporters. That is the driver of that vehicle. He has been hit by a stone. His car has been destroyed during that exchange between NASA supporters and the police officers. That same, about 3 vehicles or so, we have seen several of them, getting affected by that engagement. If we could just walk across to show you the extent of which we are talking about, Fred, the result of the engagement between police officers and the National Super Alliance. This is one of the vehicles that has been hit probably during that exchange. As you can see, it's been destroyed at the windows, and even others are the screen, and the driver of this particular vehicle is on tears, saying that he did not anticipate what he has just gone through, that is having his vehicle destroyed and him injured during that exchange in anticipation of the arrival of Raila Odinga from Germany. But police officers are since trying to assist him and try to unstuck the vehicle. All these vehicles that have been paraded here are some of those that have had the victims, come out and come for first aid from the security officers and those good Samaritans who are able, to provide with them. But that is the situation that has been transpiring here. That is another vehicle that has been caught in the melee. The extent to which we are sorry for those pictures, that is the extent to which this engagement has ended. This whole vehicle also destroyed, no windows, because it has been hit by a stone after angry NASA supporters engaged police officers who are trying, to repulse them as they try to make their way to the airport to, receive Raila Odinga. What we know for now, Fred, is we are still awaiting for the plane carrying Raila Odinga to touch down at the JKIA, and as soon as that happens, we are not sure yet what is the next plan of action by the National Super Alliance. We have not seen several leaders, including James Orengo and Johnston Muthama, as well as Boni Halwale, who are the co-conveners of this particular procession. But as and when we see them, what we understand is they are again converging from where they are, and from then we will be able, to again assemble and make their way to this point. What we understand is they are saying they are insisting that they must, meet Raila Odinga from as he lands at the airport. But of course, as I told you earlier, the saddest bit is how the security officers' engagement with NASA supporters is leading to loss of property and destruction of property along this Mombasa road. That a situation that is likely to go on for the better part of the day, at least until NASA supporters pick NASA principal Raila Odinga. So for now, we are now a few meters away from where we are. But what we understand is the lorry had told you, the water cannon that I had told you, they are trying to, unstuck it from where it's been stuck, is ongoing. What they are doing, they want to, to drain the water out of the water cannon before then it can be able to be unstuck because of the heaviness that it has. So that are just some of the attempts that they are making to, you know, drain water out of this water cannon before it can be able to be, you know, unstuck from that point. Of course, this is in preparation again for a round 2 of a showdown between the supporters who are said again to be assembling or to be, you know, converging again to come to this particular point. And so, Fred, like I've told you, we are still waiting for the Orengo-led team to see whether they are going to engage another change of tact to ensure that, you know, they let their supporters wait for them at some point away or after Cabanas, and then they will pick Raila Odinga at the airport, and then they will go meet them at the Cabanas where they are currently congregating now before they take their march. But what we have seen clearly is an intent by police officers to, you know, use all means possible to ensure that they block any NASA supporter from accessing the airport. For now, Freddie, we are waiting to see how that happens and what will be unfolding in the next hour. But for now, it's the hour that we anticipated that the plane from Germany will be touching down at the JKIA. But of course, about 10 minutes past that hour, we are trying also to get in touch with our sources at the airport, since we have not been allowed access inside, to see whether the planes that we've been seeing 10 minutes before 11 and 10 minutes after 11, whether Raila Odinga was aboard one of that particular plane. And some of the leaders that will be accompanying him from Germany include Moses Wetangula. We are having Kivutha Kibwana, the governor for Makueni, Josphat Nanok, the governor for Turkana, them being a part of the delegation that will be, you know, jetting back with Raila Odinga. And so at that far end, Freddie, as you, when you see, is what we can term as a cleared road. When that happens, it means NASA supporters from some point there at the end have, you know, blocked the road, and there are no vehicles that are coming to this particular point. And so for now, Fred, those are the pictures we are trying to bring you. The water cannon is being, you know, drained so that it becomes lighter for the sister cannon to be able to, you know, to unstuck it from the mud. And so for now, Fred, we'll just be waiting to see what again will be transpiring here, how again what will be another strategy that NASA supporters will be using. But for now, we can say police have been able to repulse them, corner them, and ensure that they do not make their way to the airport. Fred, that is the situation. We are still waiting to see what will be the next plan of action by the National Super Alliance. But clearly, until this moment, if Raila Odinga lands now, it means that only few advanced team at the airport will be receiving him. But like I told you earlier, Freddie, already his motorcade and fully completed with its chase cars have already made its way to the airport. And so that is the update we can be able to give you now. Traffic flow is going, but as I told you, at that end, Fred, NASA supporters have started gathering at the very flyover that you can see from that end. Once they do that, they will be marching as a group. Once they get into this particular point where the police are, in fact, I can see the police at the very corner at that particular, the lorry there. There is a lorry there where police are again staging another block to ensure that NASA supporters do not get past that point. That is just the flyover after the Cabanas roundabout. And once you see vehicles not using this road, it means NASA supporters have blocked the road from that end. And it means vehicles cannot access this whole Mombasa Road, at least until again they are repulsed by the security agencies. For now, Fred, I want to hand you back to studio, but in a few, when that action against Lancia, we'll be able to tell you what will be transpiring and bring you the very action, and of course hear whether the plane carrying Raila Odinga has touched down and what will be the next plan of action. Fred.
Thank you, Leto. Stephen Leto there. On a section of Mombasa Road which has been blocked as supporters and crowds engage police in running battles. Police, of course, trying as much as they can to block supporters of NASA from gaining access to the airport to welcome NASA leader Raila Odinga. Of course, The plane carrying the NASA leader was expected to touch down at 11 a.m. It's already a few minutes past 11. We still do not know whether or not that plane has touched down. And it's because even the media has been denied access into the airport, so we do not have news of what's happening inside JKIA. But as soon as we do, we will be bringing you those updates. Stephen Letor is there, and once Raila Odinga, he makes his way out onto Mombasa Road, we will be looking at that as well. But why the insistence, Joseph Semeja, sorry for that, why the insistence that you have to go into JKIA once you realize that it's going to be problematic, that the police are insisting on blocking you from accessing the airport? Why not just change strategy? You are a strategist. Why don't you just change strategy and do something else, probably elsewhere, with just the same kind of impact?
First, perhaps you should have asked, but of course I'll answer that question, but perhaps you should have asked why the insistence on blocking people who just want to go and receive someone they really
They're
love.
not here to answer
Just
for
yes.
themselves now,
Yes.
but you are here.
But now, yes, so now I'll come to your question, why the insistence? Many of us are, at a very personal level, by the way, are of such a nature that the moment you demonstrate that you want to infringe on my rights, even if I had elected not to, at that moment, enjoy those rights fully, you fire me up to show you that those rights they don't accrue from you, from the government, or from they do not, they accrue naturally. They are my rights. So what we have in the Constitution is just to confirm and affirm that everybody has these rights. So what you are seeing is people who are now feeling offended. They are not offended by the initial. They are not offended by the initial that, you know, you don't do this, don't come to the airport. They are offended that you are actually, they thought maybe it was a bluff when the police say that, because we are used to our police bluffing a lot. But they are offended by the fact that the police actually are daring to block them from accessing, yes, a security installation, but a public facility, which has places where the public is allowed to access. It would be understandable if the police were blocking people from accessing where the public is not allowed to access. But there are sections of the airport where every day public is allowed to access. So please look at it in the context of people who want to enjoy their right, and then you tell them in their face, we will not let you. So they ask you back, who are you not to let us?
But don't you think that probably you need a change of strategy at this point? It's already past 11. Raila Odinga probably has landed already, we do not know. The crowd is still not inside the JKIA. Probably, don't you think it's time, because there is a rally slated for later this afternoon and time is moving?
No, but you read a tweet at the beginning of this discussion, and you see, people gave options. Some of the NASA supporters gave options to the police. Either just allow us to receive our leader and within 20-30 minutes get out of the airport and business continues, or try to block us and we promise you we engage you the entire day. So these people have, I mean, seriously, it's not a joke. People have set aside the entire day for receiving their leader. So it's up to you, when I say you, I mean the police. It's up to the police to see how best do they work with these people to minimize disruptions to other Kenyans who are not interested in that business of welcoming the leader of NASA. So it doesn't matter how long it will take. Even if it goes on up to 6 o'clock, I can tell you for sure, without any fear of contradiction, those people are prepared to test the system that wants to show them that it can trample on their rights arbitrarily, like with impunity like that.
Yes.
And I'm sure you've seen in the past, young people telling the police that, either you withdraw, get out of this place because you are oppressing us, or we fight. Take the choice. I was glad that time. I think I saw one of the times in Kibera, the police were wise enough to take the option of, we withdraw. Let's stop oppressing them.
Yes.
Today is the same thing. Either cooperate with the leaders of these supporters to organize them in such a way that we minimize disruption to other people's lives, or you refuse and you want to arbitrarily and trample on their rights with impunity, and they engage you. As you heard Harvey say earlier, it's just human. It's not even human, any living thing. The highest instinct is the instinct for survival. The moment you threaten me and worse still make it violent, it's the instinctive response is defensive violence.
Yes, but when I also have you there, those who say that NASA supporters are continuously looking for such kind of confrontation. What dividend is there to gain from such? That they're not necessarily looking to just go about their business and be in and out of the airport within an hour, that this kind of engagement with the police is probably the highlight of the day.
No, I think that is a poor classification of what NASA supporters are. NASA supporters are ardent followers of what they believe in. And what they believe in has arisen out of their knowledge as to how much is due to them under the Constitution. And however much time it takes for them to see the fruition of this achievement, they are prepared to do it. In fact, they allocated the entire day for this particular purpose. And I don't think we really need to vilify them as we're doing, because look, these fellows are very peaceful. I won't be surprised if they come to the rescue of that water cannon that is stuck. I believe that's what they will do. A clear indication that a reform movement, as is popularly known.
They've done something similar in Kisumu a few weeks ago.
This is it. And this is what we're saying. And if you are to interrogate it further, you will not be able to see evidence of criminality. You will not be able to see evidence of violence. But when provoked, I think whoever provokes them must be prepared for any such eventuality. Look, what do you expect when a policeman lobbies a canister on people who are otherwise just marching freely? But, well, when all that is said and done, I think the Jubilee administration has to come to the understanding that change is an idea that has now arrived. Struggling to interfere with this is like changing the course of a river at the point in time when it's joining the delta to the ocean. It will result into a catastrophe. And it is as simple as that. I do not see anything wrong on what these people have done. And bear in mind, these people are now conglomerating there upon not only the request by the party leadership and the coalition leadership to be there, but upon cogent legal advice given by serious legal minds in the NASA fraternity, including yours truly, including Senator James Orengo, including Senator Moses Wetangula. So we've examined this thing with a lot of precision and come to the conclusion that what we're doing is within the confine of the law. Okay. And all these individuals who are trying to portray the gathering today as unlawful cannot be able to demonstrate to you the basis of the law that they rely upon to come to that order. In fact, if you were to ask me, I'll tell you without any fear of contradiction, there is no order from the police outlawing the gathering at Jomo Kenyatta. There is no order from the police outlawing the gathering at Uhuru Park. If there was any, we'll have been in court now and we'll have quashed it. Okay. That's the reason why I'm telling you there is no order.
Bwana Kakai Kissinger, the resultant effect of what the police has done is that Mombasa Road is virtually unusable as we speak. If at all the issue was trying to ensure that businesses continue their operations undisturbed, it has had the opposite effect, that now probably you are affecting even much more than if police would have allowed NASA supporters into the airport to receive their leader and out. Don't you think that probably they're going about this the wrong way?
If you look at what's happening on the screens and the pictures we are receiving, it's a very sad day for Kenyans. Because I think what the police are doing what they have to do. And the police are doing what is within their law and what's within the required standards of operation. Even if you left the NASA supporters to be on the streets without police protection, they will still cause chaos. You look at what's happening on North Airport Road, look at what's happening on Mombasa Road. So I think the problem here is not about the police at all. And I'm not here to speak for the police because they can speak for themselves. But I think the problem here is about us Kenyans ourselves. Is either you get something, if you get something right, you still complain you are not getting something right. Because I don't understand why a simple motorist driving on Mombasa Road or North Airport Road should be stoned by NASA supporters. What is the end game of this? I don't understand how public property, for example, is being destroyed by NASA supporters. And they are saying and singing that they are NASA supporters. So I think the problem here is not about what the police is doing or the actions of the police. I think the problem here is that what is the end game for NASA. And NASA is branding themselves that we have to achieve whatever we have to achieve, whether it's in a peaceful manner or not a peaceful manner. We are not talking as a nation. That's the biggest challenge we are having here. Because when you see NASA doing what they're doing, it's really pathetic that actually a political party can do what they're doing in terms of destruction of property. Why are you maiming people? Why are you stoning people's cars? What is the end game for this?
Okay. It is half an hour past 11, or well, at least heading to 11:30. The expectation was that at around 11, the plane carrying Raila Odinga would be touching down at the JKIA. NASA supporters had anticipated to have a grand reception for Raila Odinga inside JKIA. It appears that will not be happening because police have and still are erecting roadblocks, so NASA supporters cannot gain access into the airport. We'll continue getting updates from there. Our reporter Stephen Leto is still on standby. We also continue looking at the situation at the Kenyatta University along Thika Road, where I do understand now that our reporter Patrick Igunza is there and will be giving us a report. The University Senate elected to shut down the university indefinitely this morning, sending all students home. As at effective 9 a.m. this morning, we still have pictures from there and we'll be showing them to you, as well as getting that report from Patrick Igunza shortly. Of course, students from Kenyatta University went on the rampage yesterday, burning down one of the old administration blocks of the university, which now was housing the current finance department. They have quite a raft of complaints, including increase in fees, as well as a biting strike by lecturers. Remember, it's also one day before Governor Wahome Gakuru is laid to rest. Governor Wahome Gakuru, the late governor for Nyeri County, will be laid to rest tomorrow at Kiricho village. He died last week in a road accident. I'm still in studio with Nelson Harvey, Joseph Simeha, and Kakais Kissinger. Gentlemen, as we wrap up, because I just want to have one mention from you, at least on other issues apart from what is happening in Kenya. And this is what is happening in Zimbabwe. It's also big news. It forms part of the headlines on the dailies this morning. That's how interesting it is even to us in Kenya, because yes, there are some parallels to be drawn. There are some lessons to be learned from Zimbabwe. I remember yesterday or the day before, the dailies dedicated the first 8 to 10 pages to just what's happening in Zimbabwe. We're still getting updates. We're still not sure what's happening to Comrade Robert Mugabe. But Joseph Simeha, what do you have to say about what's happening there? Is this a case of someone who waited too long before exiting? The army trying to show him some respect, probably?
To me, a gross manifestation of very sad failure of governance, which is the thing that we are complaining about in our country. We don't want to head that direction. When individuals people very, with a lot of goodwill trust that if they donate to them their sovereignty and power, that these individuals will chart a path that will lead people to prosperity collectively as Zimbabweans. And that's what Zimbabweans did, because Robert, that is Mugabe, demonstrated to them that, or at least they thought at that time, that he's a man who is prepared, his colleagues, men and women who are prepared to fight for Zimbabweans, for the freedom and liberation of Zimbabwe, but it doesn't stop there, then to lead the nation towards prosperity collectively. But unfortunately, things just went terribly wrong at some point. And people like Mugabe, his wife, and many others, like some we have in this country, began to believe that this is about entitlement, that this is our position. In fact, they kept reminding Zimbabweans that we fought for independence. So therefore, no one else can occupy this position. It's extremely unfortunate when it gets to that level. I think it's the lowest it can get, when people have donated to you their sovereignty and power to help manage affairs of society, and then you actually mistake it for a personal, private entitlement.
Yes.
It gets to that because, there's a limit to tolerance, even from within people around you. Because the military has been one of the strongest supporters of Mugabe, because he's a fighter himself. He's a military man, and a lot of his people around him are military persons. But then he went further and now thought that, no, it's not even about the military, it's about his family. So that his wife now has more stake in it than the people he fought with, than the rest of Zimbabwe. So, well, let me not continue using too many words, but just say that if we are seeing a manifestation of failure of governance, and ultimately the people get tired, and it's through there are many options that they may use. Here the military has come to, hopefully, come to the aid of the people of Zimbabwe to manage some kind of transition, and hopefully Zimbabwe gets better out of this. In our country, we have the space, thank God, because we fought for this space. When I say we, I mean the civilians, the ordinary civilians, ourselves. We have the space to do this fighting ourselves, not using guns and whatnot, but to use the political tools that, and political and legal tools that are bestowed unto us to fight to ensure that we do not go anywhere near where Zimbabwe is. We have seen signs of people, leaders in this country, who speak as if it's a private, personal entitlement, the office they hold, when it's a public trust. And no, they are holding that office as public trust in our behalf. We have seen people, leaders in high office, say it is only our community and this other community that fought for independence. And you just, I sometimes say, do I cry or laugh when I hear this man say this?
Okay.
So in our country, this is the more reason, by the way, in Dimbulu, why we feel let us fight it as civilians, mark that, as civilians, using political tools, political and legal tools, not to get anywhere near using any other tools, but just political and legal tools.
Yes, Nelson Harvey, mention of transitional governments. Now, because that's what they're discussing as it is in Zimbabwe, the possibility of having a transitional government. In Kenya, in recent months, we've been talking a lot about transition and possibility of having a caretaker. These are just words being bandied around. Whether or not they'll head anywhere in Kenya is neither here nor there, and because we're not talking about the discussion in Kenya. But it will be interesting to watch whatever kind of transition Zimbabwe has to go through, if at all Robert Mugabe does indeed step down, because the next few months or so will be very crucial to Zimbabwe.
Well, there are so many lessons to draw from this, and it's not if Mugabe will step down, it's when Mugabe will get out of that place. Because we have seen this setting before. We have seen this setting in a cozy atmosphere with negotiators looking at a despotic leader. We saw it with Laurent Gbagbo. We saw a delegation of this kind going to see Laurent Gbagbo. He maintained his position. We saw a similar delegation go to Gambia to talk to Yahya Jammeh. He maintained a similar position, but eventually he had to go. Reason being, there's a degree of patience with which people can treat a despotic leader. And sometimes when somebody in leadership in this particular manner does not leave power, then power leaves him. And this is exactly what happens. Power leaves him. And the second lesson to draw from Zimbabwe is this. Look, the people around Mugabe are not outsiders, are not people from any other ethnic community other than his own ethnic community. That is a very good lesson to learn. Because you see, in Kenya right now, we have two communities that dominate the entire Kenyan affairs, notwithstanding that those two communities just control less than 30% of the voting population. So that even these individuals who are always praising the despotic leaders we have right now, they reach a point in time that these despotic leaders, who are cannibalistic in nature, will start cannibalizing them, as Mugabe has done, as Laurent Gbagbo did, as Yahya Jammeh did, and they will get tired.
Yes.
We don't want to reach a point in time that when we are doing a transition, we really have an economy that has been destroyed beyond reconstruction. And look, Kenya has always been a good example of how best to run their affairs in developing countries. But lately, it has become a good example of how not to do so. Look, after the 2007 Boch election and the Grand Coalition government that then ensued thereafter, what happened? The people in Zimbabwe borrowed a leaf from what we are doing to create a Grand Coalition government. You understand? When things got out of control in Laurent Gbagbo's country, Raila Odinga was flown there to try and make sense. And more recently, when the Supreme Court was listening to the first presidential election petition that seemed to have gravitas of a legal process, many judges from Africa came to see, and for a fact, I will tell you, judges from Zimbabwe came to see what is happening here. And I think we also need to draw lessons from what is happening in other countries. We have been insisting that we need a return to constitutional order. A return to constitutional order can be effectuated through a catalytic way, as we have seen in Zimbabwe. It can be effected through a very elaborate legal process, as we're doing right now, because we've maintained that the manner in which the government of the day has taken control of independent institutions, it does not enable the full benefit of the rights due to the Kenyan population under the constitution. And the only way in which to ensure that the sovereignty of the people is exercised by the people is to revert back to the constitutional order. And I will tell you without any fear of contradiction, the position in which our country has been taken to right now is no different from the position in which Zimbabweans were before the military came in.
There's an update from the airport. We do understand Raila Odinga has finally landed. The plane carrying the NASA leader has already touched down, and Raila Odinga has already disembarked, but police have still blocked the roads, so NASA supporters are still not able to access the airport. We'll be getting an update from Stephen Leto from that end. Wanakaka Kissinger, back to the issue of Zimbabwe. Whenever a leader, however good a liberator he may be at the beginning, if he stays on for too long, it becomes a problem. We have cases of that, and even in the region, quite a number of leaders, not one, two, actually three or so, were already discussing how to extend their term limits. However good a leader, and however much he or she did in liberating that country, if they stay on for a bit too long, it starts getting going bad.
I think it's a sad thing that it has happened to Zimbabwe. But some history is very important, is that in the 70s and 80s, we had numerous coups all over Africa, especially the West Africa, and partly in East Africa. Uganda was affected by this. And when you see such kind of coups and mutinies taking place, it's just a communication that the rule of law, systems of governance and democracy in that country is not working. Now, it's the most unfortunate thing that can happen to a country, because what's a coup? A coup is when the military or any other member of public takes over the management and leadership of a country. And what normally that does to a country is to suspend the laws and the constitution. So it's no longer a rule of law, but becomes the rule of man. Now, for the case of Zimbabwe, we hope that the military is speaking the truth, because the information that we are getting all over is that they have not taken over the country yet by way of a coup, but they just want to put things in place and make a few changes here and there. We hope that that happens. But remember that the people behind the so-called coup was the former vice president who actually fought with Robert Mugabe during the liberation war in the 70s. So this is a hero. This is also somebody who knows Mugabe very well. Actually, at one point, they shared a cell with Robert Mugabe. So I'm not so sure the play out or the dynamic that is taking place in Zimbabwe, but we just hope that democracy, the way my colleague has talked about, that democracy, constitutionalism will be restored as soon as possible. But the good news is here, is this, that you've seen regional bodies, the African Union and the SADC region, coming in very well and strongly defending the position in Zimbabwe. And remember, Zimbabwe are going into the next election actually in May, the following year. So they were like 6 or 7 months shy to an electoral process. So as to whether the people of Zimbabwe should have been patient to remove Mugabe from office through the constitutional means, it doesn't seem to be the case. But I had a chance last night to look at what the Constitution of Zimbabwe talks about. And I read through the Constitution of Zimbabwe. And there are very three clear mechanisms that are provided in the Constitution for them to solve this crisis. And that's why the African Union and the SADC region are moving in very closely, and have already sent envoys there. You saw that South African president already sent the convoy there, an envoy. There are only three issues that will help or come out of this. Their constitution has a very elaborate mechanism of how right now Robert Mugabe can be replaced by a vice president, because the constitution allows them to have two vice presidents sitting at any given time. So any one of the vice president can then replace Mugabe, and once he replaces Mugabe, Mugabe then has to resign, and once he resigns, the cabinet...
that is within the constitution.
Within the constitution, the cabinet and everyone will be left until then you go through the next election. Now, that leader must come from the ZANU-PF, the political party. That's one option. The other option is that they may want to negotiate that for Mugabe will then continue until May. Remember, I said that the election is in May next year. So they might say, okay, fine, what is the... We've been here for... Mugabe has been in power for all those years. What is the difficult with him just finishing the the term limit, and on condition that then Mugabe will not vie for leadership in that political party, then that could be another elaborate position to take. Then the final position is what my colleague talked about, this transitional government. Now, that's also allowed in that constitution, where they allow the transitional government to come in place. Now, the transitional government...
At least their constitution allows for such a transitional government.
It's through negotiation. Now, the transitional government then allows that Mugabe, ZANU-PF, and other political parties can come together and form a government on transitional basis to take the country through the electoral process. As to whether the election will be done in May or not, that's another thing. The possibility could be they could go through a transitional government and postpone the election to a later date. But whatever the case is, the good news is that SADC region is involved because Zimbabwe is in the southern region. The good news is that the African Union is involved in this. We hope that diplomacy will carry the day and there will be proper mechanisms put in place. However, we have to understand that the beauty about this kind of a coup is not strictly speaking a coup, because we have not seen any bloodshed.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Bonasimeka, you want to add something?
Yes, I just have kindly, especially to what my brother Kakai just said, which is extremely important, that they are constitutional and legal mechanisms of transferring power from one person to another in Zimbabwe if the citizens of the nation so feel that now it's time to change. It's the same thing for us here in Kenya. In fact, very beautiful, very elaborate in our constitution, in our laws. But the moment a small group of individuals block those constitutional means, those legal mechanisms, it's like water. It will find some way. The citizens will eventually find some way. One hopes, as Kakai has said, it's a way that does not lead to any loss of life. But we have enough examples on this continent where, unfortunately, it's gone to that extent. We have examples like in Egypt, where the military has been involved and unfortunately at a very huge cost to people's lives and property and so on. But it has happened, and eventually the African Union has no choice but to somehow find a way of accommodating the country, and life moves on. What we know about our regional blocks like East African Community, SADC, and African Union, there is also a very unfortunate weakness in terms of governance. They have become like clubs of homeboys who protect each other, that they even sometimes refuse to follow the constitutive acts of the regional blocks and the Africa Union. And that's why when this happens, their first instinct is, let's protect one of our own. But thank God, one of the statutes of the AU, that talks about unconstitutional change of government, recognizes that actually a sitting president, when refuses and blocks all means by which power may be transferred or changed, is also a type of unconstitutional change of government. You are the same president, you are in office, but say you pervert the electoral system. You make it so difficult for anybody to ever succeed you through elections. The AU classifies that as an unconstitutional change of government, at least its statute. But then because you have this club of men, there's normally just been one woman from Liberia, who protect each other, the first thing they will say is that no coup, no change without following the rules. But then they know that they've perverted the rules. They know that they've made it extremely difficult for you to follow the rules. Eventually, a country just has to take its affair in its own hands, tell the AU, stay aside, let's sort out our issues, and then you can come, we will invite you to come and help us where we need, and we move on. And that's what's going to happen in Zimbabwe, I think.
Finally, Nelson Havi, as Kakai Kissinger said, he has read the Constitution of Zimbabwe. I haven't, I must admit. But he says the issue of a transitional government is already provided for in the laws. Do you think that that's something Kenya should include in our constitution, that the provision that there's a possibility we could have a transitional government at any point in time, whatever the circumstances may be? Do you think it's necessary?
Well, the manner in which the Kenyan constitution was drafted took into account the level of democratic development that we'd reached by that point in time. We were not in any way comparable to a country like Zimbabwe. We'd had so many elections, you understand? And the Kenyan constitution was drafted in such a perfect way to ensure that there is seamless transfer of power. And then mischievously, as I've said time without number, the people who ascended to power immediately after the promulgation of the constitution are the people who had opposed this constitution. And they've gone around and looked for ways of playing with it. That's why they keep on telling you the elections must be held within 60 days because the Constitution says. What if we have an earthquake on the day of the election? There will be no election here because the election date is not like Christmas Day that can pass whether there is a funeral or a wedding in a particular homestead. So these are the individuals who have cocooned themselves on a simplistic interpretation of the Constitution. Because in a setting where a transition has to take place, is where constitutional order has failed, like my colleague has indicated right now. And where the constitutional order has failed, you cannot tell us that please do this under the Constitution, yet you are the one who has hijacked the Constitution. Then these mechanisms of ensuring return to constitutional order are international mechanisms. We have the Lome Convention, which recognizes the fact that you may be in power, but if you've been in power before and you've elongated your stay in power through manipulation of the electoral process, your regime is as illegitimate as that which has ascended to power through a coup. And that's exactly the reason as to why there is this push for the people's movement to resist and say we do not recognize this regime, because this regime keeps on telling us confine your operations within the Constitution, but they have hijacked the Constitution. We have a situation that is synonymous to a GK Land Rover that has been hijacked, and you, the passengers in, are being told, look, you are the property of the government. It's not the property of the government.
Okay. Thank you so much, Nelson Havi, advocate, Joseph Simeha, NASA strategist, and Kakai Kissinger, former acting chief registrar of the judiciary. Thank you so much. And also I need to thank Bonairungo Kangata, the senator from Murang'a County in absentia, has already left the panel, for your very well considered opinions this morning on the various issues we've been discussing. We do understand Raila Odinga has landed at the JKIA. We'll be getting those pictures in a moment. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Let's now take a break. We'll be back with more on Citizen Extra.